In this video, I'm going to show you how to go from beginner to pro with Airtable and N8N. This is a video response to Can't Blend This. Now, he was having a little bit of trouble doing some stuff inside his Airtable, so I thought I'd make a video going from zero to hero. So let's jump right in. First, I'm going to show you guys how to connect Airtable to N8N. After that, we'll jump into Airtable's documentation, and I'll show you guys how to understand it. Then we'll do a deep dive into Airtable's API calls and even jump into some advanced workflows so that you guys leave here being a pro. Connecting Airtable to N8N is really easy. All we have to do is add a new Airtable node. Let's create a new credential. Let's click Access Token. Then we'll go over to Airtable and we'll go airtable.com/create/tokens. Let's create a token, give it a name. Let's add a scope. I'm just going to add all of them by default. And let's add the base that we're working in. I'm going to add the YouTube test base. Let's click Create Token, copy the token, go back to N8N, paste the token, and click Save. And it looks like we're good to go. Now let's talk a little bit about the Airtable documentation. Sometimes you're going to have to use the HTTP node instead of an Airtable node. And the reason why is because the Airtable node does have some limitations. So we're going to need to understand how to use the Airtable documentation. So I have the documentation up above here. Now Airtable has these different bases. They're basically projects, as you can think of, and inside those projects you have different tables, right? And so the way this works is if you're interacting with base data by itself, you can click here, and here are all the API calls that you can do within the bases. Okay, so if you want to interact with the table inside of the base, you can go base, tables, update table, create table, things like that. If you want to interact with records within that table, you can go base data, records here, and it'll show you the API documentation. Now, I have a video about how to understand different APIs, different requests like GET request, PUT request, things like that. So I'm not going to dive too deep into that right here. If you want to check that out, you can check out that video. However, the main thing you guys need to know is that for most of these requests, there is a curl that you can copy here. So you don't need to understand too much of the documentation. You just need to know, oh, this is to list all the records. Cool. Copy here. And then let's go over. Let's make an HTTP node. And then just click Import curl. Paste it in. Click Import. And we're good to go. All we have to do is change the token right here and change the base ID and the table ID right here, which we can get in many different ways. And the API call should essentially work. So that's all you really need to know about the Airtable documentation. Now, before we start building any workflows and interacting with Airtable, I do need to mention that Airtable does have rate limits, and that limit is 5 requests per second, which means if you guys in your N8N workflows do more than 5 commands per second to Airtable, then you will get an error. So we need to make sure that if we're processing data extremely quickly, that we don't hit those limits and that we put a wait of 200 or 300 milliseconds in between each API call so that we don't hit those limits. Now let's start building some stuff inside of N8N. I brought up an Airtable node here, and the first thing you're going to notice is it's pretty limited. Like, for example, there's no node to list all the records within a table. I find that to be quite strange. There's a lot of things here that is missing, and if we go to the documentation, there's a lot more we can do with Airtable on the organizational management, permissions, bases, tables, tons of stuff that is not included in the native N8N node, which is why we're going to be using a lot of the HTTP request node. We will use the Airtable node a little bit, mostly for triggers, getting base ID numbers, things like that. But outside of that, we're not really going to use it much at all. So to start out, let's go ahead and get many bases right here. Let's just test the step and make sure things are working. And as you can see, it is working. We have a base ID number with a name and permissions. Wonderful. Now let's get some records in the table. So we'll go back into Airtable. We'll get a base schema, and we'll choose base by ID. And we'll go ahead and drag this ID over here and test that step. And now we have the schema of the base itself. Now, why did I do those two API calls first? The reason why is because we need the table ID and the base ID for every single API call that we do going forward. So now that we have both of those together, I'm going to go ahead and create an edit node real quick. Edit fields. And we're going to grab the ID of the table and the ID of the base so that we always have it. We'll call it table underscore ID, base underscore ID. Okay? Let's go ahead and test this step. And now I'm going to actually pin this data here so that we don't have to do these API calls anymore. Now we have all the information we need to do custom API calls going forward. So to start off, let's go ahead and list all the records within a table. That is what our friend in the YouTube comments wanted to do, and he was unable to do so. So let's jump over to the documentation. We'll go to base data records, list records, and we can see here we need the base ID, we need the table ID or the table name, and we need the auth token right here. So let's go ahead and copy this request example. Let's go back over. Let's create an HTTP node. Let's import curl. Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to replace this token here with the token we made previously. Then we're going to scroll up, and in the URL, we need to change the base ID and the table ID. So make sure you're under expression here. Let's delete here the table ID or name. Drag and drop. And we'll do the same with the base ID. Drag and drop. Wonderful. Now let's go ahead and test the step. And you can see we're getting different records here. And if we go to the table, we can see that the records are the same. All right, now say that we wanted to get all of the records that have only a specific status, and we wanted to update the record and change the status. Now, unfortunately, Airtable does not have an API to filter records by a specific state. So instead, what we are going to do is we're going to do it directly inside of N8N. Now, one thing that's weird about this JSON is it's a list with an object inside of it. And inside that object, there's a list, right? So if I was to put a filter node after this, it wouldn't work. I'm going to show you guys how that would look. So let's go ahead and put a filter node here. And let's say that I just want to get the status. Status is done, right? Watch what happens. And let's test step. As you can see, it kept the entire table, but there are a lot of different statuses. This is because this is an object inside of the original list. So in order to manipulate the data inside of N8N after we receive it, we actually need to filter it down just a little bit more first. We need to remove the list inside of the records object. So we're going to add here a code node. Now this is really easy. You can copy paste my code whenever you want. And here, basically what I'm doing is I'm extracting everything that's inside of here and just turning it into a list. So we no longer have this field here called records. It will be deleted. So let's test that step. And as you can see, now we have just a list. So this is a list with 4 items. And each item is a record. So now we can further filter down this list. So let's add another node. Let's do a filter node. And let's say, hey, I want status, and this time I don't want it to equal done, right? Because done is not really what we're looking for. We're looking for to do. So what we're going to do is type to do here and click test step, and we can see that we only kept 1 item and we got rid of 3 items. This one has the status of done. This one has status of in progress. This one has status in progress. All right, now we have the one record that we want to edit. So let's change some values in that record. So I'm going to put here an edit node. Now this could be where you go to ChatGPT and you get some different automations set up. Maybe you get email or response from a customer, or you embed more data, you combine stuff. Your creativity here is unlimited. I'm just going to show you a simple example. So we've got this one field here. We're going to need the ID. We're going to need the name, the status, and then the notes. So let's change sad here to happy. Okay. And let's change the status to done, like the other ones. Okay. We'll leave the rest the same, and we'll go ahead and add one more node after that. Now this is to update a record. Now the cool thing is I believe N8N has that node already. So we can go update record here. And let's execute the previous nodes. We'll go by ID from base. And let's go ahead and go to the original edit fields. We'll go table ID, base ID. So we're working with the same one. And now columns to match ID. So we'll drop the ID, put the name here. We'll put the new status as an expression, right? We'll put the notes here, and we'll go ahead and test the step. And we can see it was updated. Let's go back over to Airtable, and now you can see it is updated here. So we've successfully updated a record. If you like this video and you're finding value from it, I'm currently hosting a free community for anybody who wants to become a master at automation. So check out the link down below. All right, now let's say we wanted to update multiple records. And by updating multiple records, we wanted to change the values of them differently. Let's say that these two in progress records, we wanted to update to done, but we wanted Austin Reed now to be sad, and Hello World, we wanted to stay the same. So let's jump over to N8N. Let's delete everything back from the filter, okay? And jumping in the filter, let's change to do to say in progress. Now it needs to be exactly the same as written here. Let's test the step. And we have two items that are in progress. Now we're going to add a loop over items. Beautiful. Let's delete that. And we're going to add here an if node. Beautiful. Now let's go ahead and test the previous nodes. And we'll say if this value is equal to hello world, then we will do nothing but update the status. And if it's not equal to hello world, then we will change happy to sad, okay? So let's jump in here. Let's do the Airtable node. Let's go update record. So if hello world is true, we do nothing and we just update the Airtable automatically. So we connect that up. We have the table and the base ID. Let's execute the previous nodes real quick. Let's just grab everything here. Now, of course, the status is going to change now to done. So we can just select done here. It's perfect. It'll work just fine. Okay? And everything else will stay the same. But if it's not hello world, here we need to change the status. So let's go ahead and duplicate this here. Sorry, we need to change the notes. And here we're going to put sad. Okay? And then we're going to just loop back around like this. So they both continue. And now what this should essentially do is it should update hello world to be done, and it should update Austin Reed to be sad and also be done. So let's test the workflow. And let's see what happened. And as you can see, it did exactly what we wanted it to do. That was one way to batch update records, albeit one by one. Now imagine that we wanted to update a lot of records only using one API call. Imagine we have a Excel sheet, some with new records and some with records that we needed to update, and we just wanted to update it all with one API call. Well, I'm going to show you guys exactly how to do that. All right, so checking the Airtable API documentation, we do have a API method to update multiple records here. It says we can update up to 10 records or upsert them when perform upsert is set. Now, upsert means to update it if it exists, and if it doesn't exist, to add it. So if we scroll down here to upserts, it says set perform upsert property. If you include an ID, it will update the record. If you don't include the ID, then it will create a new record. And it has an example right here of what that looks like. Perform upsert. Here's what the request looks like. So let's go ahead and copy this right here. We'll go back to our workflow. I detached a couple of nodes here. This node right here, it's just grabbing all the records from the table, if you guys remember, okay? And we're going to add another one. It's an HTTP node. All right. And we're going to import curl. Paste it in, click import, and we're going to click expression here, change our base ID and our table ID. So we go over to the left, we're going to go to edit fields, table ID goes at the end, the base ID goes in between the two slashes. Wonderful. Then we have to change our token, so let me add the token real quick. Wonderful. Now here is the format of the data. And so basically what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to change this to have our data. We want to have some existing records and we want to have some new records. Now our current table looks like this. I was doing a little bit of testing before. Basically what we're going to do is change all of these records to say funny. Then we're going to add a new record right here that says something else. So let's go ahead and go back here. I'm going to edit this JSON file in accordance to the last request that I got here. If you can see, I got the records with the ID and all the stuff right here. I'm just going to replace records right here with these, and we're going to change it. So let me just delete the records real quick. We'll go ahead and click here. We'll click copy, copy selection. We'll paste that in. Okay, now let me go ahead and edit these real quick. All right, so now we changed all of the records here to say funny, and we deleted all the information that is already the same. We only have information that's different. So this would be record 1, funny, record 2, funny, right? But now we need to add a new record. So let's go ahead and add one more record down here and make it a new record. All right, so we added the new record, so it's just a new object called fields, right? And it has the new record information right there. I believe this should be tabbed in one more time. And this as well. There you go. Now it looks beautiful. All right, so we're good to go. So let's go ahead and test this step and hopefully everything works. And it looks like it did execute successfully, so let's check the table and see what it looks like. It updated all these records to funny, and it added a new record of angry that's in the to-do status. So we're good to go. Now you guys have all the building blocks that you need in order to become a pro at automating Airtable with N8N. But if you guys would like to level up your skills even more, I do have a video on mastering API calls, so be sure to check that out, and I'll see you guys next time. If you like this video and you're finding value from it, I'm currently hosting a free community for anybody who wants to become a master at automation. So check out the link down below.